This clip from a recent podcast by George Osborne and Ed Balls called Political Currency is incredibly revealing of the state of our political system. Take a look.
Let me tell you, this is no time for a novice.
I'm not sure if I've ever talked about this before, but actually, that line, I had been at a dinner the night before with the Sun newspaper, and I was sitting with Rebecca Wade, the editor of the Sun, about 10 people around the table, and she just said, tell me what's going on. And I was talking about the challenge Gordon was facing, the financial crisis, all of these things. And she suddenly said, stop, she said. That's the line. This is no time for a novice. She said, if Gordon Brown says that in his speech tomorrow, I promise you that will be the headline in every newspaper.
Well, and of course, Rebecca Brooks, once again proving that she's been running the country, in fact, for the last 20 years.
Now, we live in what I like to call the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. So we have a three-way ecosystem, which are the two main political parties, and the mainstream media. Now, the two parties are the same, not just on policy, but the way they navigate the walls of power. So it's an exclusive club where personal relationships take priority over the needs of ordinary people. Now, George Osborne literally admitted that Rebecca Brooks ran the country for 20 years. Now, I mean, that's via Rupert Murdoch, right? We kind of all know that. So to explain the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, it's pretty much almost the opposite of the Marxian thought that is the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, the word dictatorship doesn't actually mean dictator or totalitarian. These words were written back in the 1800s, whatever. But what it actually means is a political system that largely benefits one class. So the dictatorship of the proletariat or workers essentially means a system that represents them. So with the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, it does mean we still live in a democracy where, workers make gains, of course. Over the last 100 years, of course, we've made wins for the working class, but the wealthiest in society will always disproportionately benefit, which is what we have, is what we live under. So when you have politicians who engage in this civility politics, which I absolutely hate, and George Osborne, Ed Balls are a perfect example of it, then only one class wins. This chummy, pally attitude, despite supposedly being on the opposite sides of the political spectrum, I mean, it's not true, breeds a consensus or consensus politics. Is that consensus the representation of the working class? No, it's the representation of the 1%. Now, politics is about conflict. That is what it is at its core. We need conflicts. The problem is there's actually a lack of it. Now, this might seem like a crazy thing to say, given everything that is going on, but a lot of it is a facade. The culture wars, that's a manufactured war that's pushed from the top down. The media, demagogues, politicians, they like this. A lot of them benefit from it. Now, more specifically, up until a few years ago, most people supported trans rights. A few years before that, no one spoke about it. No one cared. The attitude was live your life the way you want to. A better time. Now, this false narrative of transphobia, which has been pushed and pushed and pushed, has made it become a real thing. But the real conflict is a conflict that isn't manufactured, but a naturally occurring one, and that's class. But we don't have a real political conflict when it comes to class. Why? Well, both political parties are largely on the same side. Now, I'm not some kind of doomer. Of course, I'm not someone that if the Labour Party doesn't 100% represent my values or my policies, then they're suddenly exactly the same. I'm not like that. Of course, there's been many iterations of the Labour Party that has been 100% better for workers. Even when Blair was leader, the new Labour government did some really good policies. But did Labour or did Blairism transform society? Did they transform the working class? Of course they didn't. Now, today, we're actually in a more unique position because the Labour Party are quite literally exactly the same as the Tories. Now, some will look at this podcast between Balls and George Osborne positively. It's always good when politicians get along. It means in actual debates, Rory Stewart is the pinnacle of this type of aesthetic, but on substance, he voted for the most heinous policies just like the rest of the Tories. It's why I liked it when Laura Pidcock, when she was an MP, said, well, I don't want to be friends with the Tories. She rightly saw them as the enemy. It's why when Angela Rayner called Tories scum, and by the way, she meant politicians, not every single Conservative voter, as some in the mainstream media claim, I really liked it because I want to see more of that anger, but we seldom do. So this podcast is really a symptom of the system. We enable our politicians to chum around get pissed at strangers bar, and now they're just being far more open about it. You know, they strike allegiance with one another rather than the people they are supposed to represent. But this is allowed to happen because we live in a corrupt system that benefits the 1%.